there, I'm Diana Ellis from WOSDEC. So WOSDEC is the West of Scotland Development Education Centre. We work with 13 local authorities across the west of Scotland, and we often do national stuff too. So I'm presenting this What's Fair Trade Got to Do with Climate Justice for the Scottish Fair Trade Forum, because fair trade and climate justice education are a big part of global citizenship, and that's what we do with schools and professional learning for teachers across Scotland and across our authorities. So I hope you enjoy finding out more about how fair trade and climate justice are connected and what you can do to get involved. So what we're going to be doing in this session is exploring why fair trade's so important for climate justice and for social change everywhere. And what it is about fair trade that actually is beyond what we might imagine fair trade would do. So how fair trade both respects the environment as well as addressing inequalities, and how you can get involved. So what is the big picture? Well, you'll be aware that farmers in the Global South are already feeling the effects of climate change, so we're aware that that's happening, and that these farmers grow a lot of the stuff we buy. So if we imagine our bananas, our tea, our coffee, our chocolate, things that have to be grown in warm climates that we consume, are grown by farmers who are feeling the effects of climate change. So what are these effects? Things like more extreme weather events, so heavy rain, prolonged dry seasons and drought, and all of this leads to increasing plant disease affecting crops, which obviously has an effect on their income. So this means that there are now seasons when the harvest fails completely, and this quote is from a fair trade cooperative in Malawi, a farmer from that cooperative, describing how when this happens the immediate impact is hunger for the already vulnerable families. So it has a huge effect because those farmers who are growing cash crops, they're not able to eat those crops, if they can't sell them, then they're not able to buy the food that they need for their families. So what fair trade does to mitigate for this means that farmers have enough money if disaster hits. So they're able to support themselves if they can't sell their crops within a particular harvest. They also have money to invest in diversifying crops, and that's really, really important. So they're not just dependent on one particular crop, and that the change in climate means that they can have more resilient crops. Also, fair trade provides the money for investment in different farming methods that are more sustainable. So different irrigation methods that might run off solar panels, using trees in different ways. So we'll find out a little bit more about that going through. So what about farmers at COP26, our big conference in 2021 when all the world leaders came to Scotland? And there was a delegation of farmers there representing fair trade farmers across the world, and they had really clear asks. So these are their 4 clear asks. They wanted the 100 billion climate finance that was actually promised in the Paris COP21 in Paris, the Paris Agreement, that governments around the world and world leaders of the developed nations would be committing that 100 billion a year. Now that just didn't happen since Paris. It's well short of that. Obviously we've had the COVID pandemic in between, but even before COVID, this was not happening. So what the farmers were saying were, okay, you need to get back on track with this promise that you made, and listen to the expertise of farmers within that. Be honest about the emissions. That's the clear thing. It's about transparency and accountability. And make the rules so that future trade deals cut the high carbon trade. So this is particularly important when new trade deals are being made, and we're in an interesting position here, having come out of Europe and now in the process of making new trade rules all over the place with different countries. So we could be doing this really well and having our sustainability all built in, or we could be driven by the profits, and we could be less concerned about the carbon. So what the farmers are saying is, make sure the future trade rules have this written in. They're strengthened so that businesses are supported to invest in sustainable supply chains. So that means that every step, from farm to fork, that there's sustainability within that and fair wages. So what do you think? Were they successful with any of these things? You could pause the video and you could be having a chat about whether they were successful. I'll give you a chance to do that. Okay, so let's find out. So really sadly, not at all. COP26 was a huge disappointment for farmers, and their asks, they were acknowledged, but they weren't heard enough to be written into the COP26 agreements, which is really devastating news. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with what we can do now as citizens, doesn't it? We're not world leaders. What can we do now? So what I'm going to share with you is a video coming soon, and I want you to have a think about what are the important points for you. So I'll give you a chance to have a think about that after the video. I'm going to play the video now.
The devastating impact of the climate crisis on the most marginalized and who are least responsible for the current status is of grave concern.
It's just not fair for farming communities already suffering the worst effects of climate change to pick up the bill for dealing with a crisis they have done the least to cause.
Our poor farmers have the big challenges of the climate change.
Farmers and workers worldwide, they want governments to keep their promises, especially providing the $100 billion pledged to communities hit hardest by the climate crisis, and making sure that they can take a leading role in deciding how it is spent.
Placing people and planet before profits, Fairtrade calls out to all businesses to transform their business systems and join the movement for trade and climate justice.
We have planted the shade trees to maintain the water in the soil. During the exceptional rainfall, the flood, we have also tried to build the parabolic dryer house where we dry the conflict to mitigate the challenges caused by the climate change.
Here in Scotland, we can make a difference. We can choose to buy fair trade products from fair trade businesses.
Fair trade and ethical values are good for business. For our customers, from the feedback that we get, they feel proud and they feel good to consume our product. They enjoy and they think it's good quality and feel good about it.
It's also about ensuring that we join our voices here in Scotland with the voices around the globe to make that collective call for change in the way in which business and trade is done.
There's no climate justice without trade justice, and so we need to act now and address these issues together. Fair trade is the ethical choice for individuals, businesses, and governments to take action. So join us in campaigning for a more just world in this vibrant fair trade nation.
Okay, so I encourage you to take this time to pause and to talk with each other about what was important for you, something that you learned that you didn't know around this video, is something that struck you. Okay, so I hope that's given you an opportunity to think about the key points for you. For us, what we'd like to share with you is that, well, we were saying earlier, governments are not keeping this promise of 100 billion to those communities already suffering the worst effects. And what Fairtrade does, as you could see in the video, is that it places the people and planet before profits. We're talking about this being the ethical choice. So farmers can invest in those creative solutions that you saw in the video, such as those cool parabolic dryers for the coffee beans that protects them from heavy rain. So what can we do? So we can support fair trade businesses. So if you're in a school where you're looking to buy things for your fair trade shop, that's a way we can do that. Another way that we can do that if we don't have money for supporting fair trade businesses in this way is through campaigning. So we can do this in a number of ways, and I think as most schools have Twitter accounts these days, that's an excellent, social media is an excellent way to do that. So we want to campaign for that just world, what we talk about in terms of justice, trade deals that put people and planet before the profits. So the first one, supporting fair trade businesses. So I would invite you again to pause the video and have a chat with each other about which of these can be fair trade products. Okay, I hope you've had a chat. Let's have a see which can. So the answer is all of them, which is an exciting thing. And when I'm doing this live with schools, I often say, actually, even your phone. So I'm not sure if you can see this is a fair phone, which is an example of a mobile phone where the whole supply chain is ethical. So we can guarantee that there's been no child labour, there's been no environmental pollution, that the people who are putting together the little components of the phone in the factory have been paid properly, and that the whole thing is actually recyclable and part of that circular economy. So the sustainability angle as well as the fair wages. Some of the others are probably more obvious, like your tea and coffee. We're aware of fair trade clothes now, obviously with their school uniforms, that's a thing. Chocolate, you might even have seen fair trade roses in the supermarkets. Fair trade gold and fair trade diamonds are becoming more available, so even our jewellery can be fair trade as well. So if you're really interested in the fashion side of things, I would really encourage you to have a listen to the Faircast podcast. This is in the teacher notes here, and you can find it online as well. A really excellent interview with my amico, which, yeah, we don't have time to do right now, but I really encourage you to have a listen to that. So the next bit that we're going to do together is explore 10 principles of fair trade from the World Fair Trade Organization. These are 10 rights-based principles followed by businesses that have applied for and been awarded status as a guaranteed fair trade enterprise by the World Fair Trade Organization. So the World Fair Trade Organization is different to Fair Trade International in their fair trade mark, which we are also familiar with. Where the Fair Trade mark certifies commodities such as bananas and chocolate, tea, coffee, gold, and so on in their supply chains, the World Fair Trade Organization assesses the entirety of a business. It assesses the enterprise's structure and business model, its operations, and its supply chains. Both systems guarantee to us, the consumer, that we are definitely buying fair trade. So the similarities and differences between the World Fair Trade Organization and fair trade is explained really well in an animation from the Scottish Fair Trade Forum that you can watch on their YouTube and Vimeo channels and on their websites too. So we're looking at the 10 principles of fair trade and considering what some of them could be. And you can see the World Fair Trade Organization's logo in the bottom right here. So you can see here that some of these are covered up, the 10 principles. So what I would like you to do is pause the video again and have a chat together about what you think is underneath the captions that have been hidden. So if you look carefully at the logos, you might be able to work that out. Okay, so welcome back. We are going to have a chat. So obviously the first principle is that opportunities for disadvantaged producers. So we know what advantages and disadvantages are. So if we are aware of disadvantages, where there's a kind of unfairness there, isn't there? And we know that those farmers who put very little carbon emissions into the sky and are not responsible for climate change are actually experiencing the worst effects. So number one is about enabling disadvantaged farmers and workers to move from income insecurity and poverty to economic self-sufficiency and ownership. Number two, you can see a wee clipboard with a magnifying glass. So I wonder how you got on with this. This one is transparency and accountability. So everything has to be transparent. There's no what we call corruption. There's no money passing between hands that's not accounted for, and that every aspect of the work is transparent. We can see it. You can see it clearly. Fair trade practices. So that's quite obvious for principle 3. But what it means is that the organisation trades with concern for the social, economic and environmental well-being of producers and does not maximise profit at their expense. Number 4, fair prices and wages, where prices have been agreed between the buyer and seller with an equal share for all players in the supply chain. And again, fairly negotiated wages for workers, presuming the payment of at least a local living wage, a wage that can provide a decent standard of living. What did you think about number 5? So this is the one about labour, and so this is quite a strong image, isn't it? So if you think about being in chains and you can't get away, so child labour is where children are forced to work and not able to go to school, or they're made to work because that's required in the family. Forced labour is for adults who are made to work under modern slavery conditions. And fair trade enterprises follow the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and local laws regarding child labour. So again, a business following these 10 principles would ensure that no one is forced to work against their will. As you can probably imagine from the image in number 6, this is where we're talking about gender equality, gender equity, so no discrimination because of your gender. Fair trade organisations, businesses, they all have to show that they have a plan to promote gender equality that makes sure that women as well as men are able to gain the resources that they need to be productive, and also the ability to influence the wider policy and regulations that shapes their livelihoods and their lives. Number 7, good working conditions. So that comes back to the how healthy and happy do we feel at work? We're getting enough breaks. In a factory, for example, it could mean providing proper ventilation for the workers. Capacity building is this big jigsaw here. So that just means that fair trade, one of the principles is that it supports marginalised farmers, workers, and supports employees to develop their skills and capabilities through fair trade to build their capacity. There's got to be the promotion of fair trade within that. So fair trade organisations raise awareness of the need for greater justice in the world through fair trade. And number 10, I wonder if you got this, it's got the lovely green colour, so that might give it away, and a plant growing. So this is respect for the environment, and this is often one that people don't associate with fair trade. They think it's just all about the money that farmers are being paid. But as an organisation producing fair trade products, you have to use organic or low pesticide production methods wherever possible. You also have to maximise the use of raw materials from sustainably managed sources and buy locally whenever possible. These organisations aim to use production technologies that try to reduce energy consumption and, where possible, use renewable energy technologies that minimise greenhouse gas emissions. They also seek to minimise the impact of their waste on the environment. So I'm sure that you've learned some new things there about fair trade. So what can we do to get involved? So here is the Twitter handle Fair Trade Nation for the Scottish Fair Trade Forum. Whether you are in a primary school or a secondary school, you can join up with others. So there will be other fair trade groups. It might be local church or faith groups. So eco groups, it might be your local secondary or your local nursery or other primary schools around you. So the bigger we are, the stronger we are. And really, we would encourage you to use social media to ask your favourite brands about their supply chain. So if you're really into Nike trainers or, a Superdry t-shirt, you can be tweeting them saying, we've been learning about fair trade, we love your brand, we want to know who made your clothes, where does the cotton come from, how fair and how sustainable is your supply chain, how much do you care about climate change? So that climate justice and trade justice just being completely interlinked. We really, really encourage you supporting those brands that make the things that you love to get on board with the sustainability agenda. So thank you for listening and for participating. If you'd like to find out more about fair trade in Scotland, it's really worthwhile checking out the Scottish Fair Trade Forum's website. It's very easy, scottishfairtradeforum.org.uk. And if you'd like to get involved and hear more about what we do in terms of broader global citizenship with schools, please get in touch with us at WOSDEC. Again, very easy website, wasdec.org.uk, and our contact details are there, as well as a list of other resources that we have for schools and professional learning you can get involved with. Okay, thank you, and all the very best with your fair trade and climate justice campaigning.